Host.
Okay, hello. Welcome to the show we're calling Resilience Uncovered. Isn't that what we call it?
Oh yeah.
Resilience Uncovered. You might say, oh, these people, they look like experts, that they know what they're doing. Probably not the case. But we do want to share with you what we have learned. And Michaela and I took a program called the Brain Story Certification. It's amazing. It's free through the Alberta Family Wellness Institute, and you just register and take it. It's 30 hours, I believe. It's an amazing program, teaches you lots about, adverse experience that happen in people's lives and how they ultimately get over those or heal from those situations. Get over sounds crude, but with that, how they address and move forward to a better, happier life, kind of a thing. Dr. Bruce Perry, who is the author of The Boy Who Was Raised as a Dog, he says you can't get through life without adversity. It's just impossible. But connection to healthy people is a buffer against stressors. So whatever has happened in your life that might have caused you to have beliefs about yourself that there's something wrong with you or there's something broken with you, none of that is true. You are perfect the way you are, and whatever your skin color, your gender, your sexual identity, your whatever the thing is, that's exactly the way you're supposed to be. So we are just going to have a chat about resilience, and Michaela and Marie have had different experiences. I've been very blessed. My trauma in life has been small t little things, but they still created beliefs in me that made me kind of doubt and behave in a way that wasn't most beneficial for my best life, my best go forward kind of a thing. And that, just so you know, that ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, man, I'm talking a lot already.
We love it.
You keep going.
Okay, so
I think we're doing an introduction with.
This is the introduction. Okay. Yeah. Back in 1995, not me, Dr. Vincent Folletti did this study, and it was a huge study through Kaiser Permanente, a health maintenance organization in, I believe, San Diego. And it was huge, 70,000 people or something like that. And he was running a weight loss program, and he had great success with this weight loss program, except for some outliers. It just wouldn't work, right? And he wanted to do more research. Why is this not working? So what he did was he had another survey that he asked, asked some more in-depth questions.
Actually, before this discovery was made by a person that he was providing this weight loss program to, because he was asking her, like, how do you feel about the program? You're not losing any weight. Do you know why you're not losing any weight? And she said, well, doctor, it's because I was sexually assaulted as a child. I was abused. And so he was like, what does that have anything to do with weight loss while you're in your 40s? And she said, well, because I was sexually assaulted as a child, I developed a coping mechanism of binge eating. And now I soothe my emotions by eating impulsively and compulsively. And that was what sparked his thought process about, is trauma related to these behaviors?
Good correction, yeah. Michaela. Thanks. Yeah. I appreciate that. So that's exactly what he did. He found out, and he surveyed all these people, and he found people that had these adverse childhood experiences, and there's 10. You can do the survey online. There's 10 things, and the more that people had, the greater their life experiences, negative life experiences, the greater the number of addictions they had, the greater heart disease, the greater Alzheimer's, the greater rheumatoid arthritis, the greater strokes, the greater heart attacks. Everything went up with those greater number of adverse childhood experiences, and that's exactly how he discovered this. So the thought, Dr. Gabor Mate will say, is that these experiences that have happened, it's not that they've happened, it's what it's done to you internally. And then how the belief that you've created about that, right? Yeah. We've all done binge eating and those kind of behaviors before. Yes. And that wasn't beneficial for us. That was something we were doing to soothe us, right? So,
and this kind of relates to that experience where people talk about PTSD, and they say the only people that have PTSD are people who have been to war, or people who have been victims of sexual trauma, or all these big things that they create as the only qualifiable things for having PTSD. And a lot of people say, just like Alan said, it's not about the trauma that happened to you, because some people go to war and they come home fine. Some people experience sexual trauma, they are fine. It's not about what happens to you, it's about what happens within you in response to what happened to you that determines if you're going to be traumatized from it.
Definitely. And how about the supports people have?
Yep.
How about that?
Yeah, right? Well, and actually that ties in really well to the conversation we had to have about the resilience scale. So this prop that we have here, you kind of can't see it because it's behind the name, but there's our name tags, but there are the 2 plates. And so
You can
this,
probably slide it over here.
Here,
Yeah.
what do you make? I'll make you make it a little bigger. I got another plate.
So the reason why I'm not talking too much is because I haven't taken this program that Alan and Michaela have taken.
Mhm.
So this is also a learning experience and learning time for me
Oh, there.
as
Huh?
I think that'll be fine.
Oh, wait a minute. We can also do
Means-
this.
Oh yes.
There. Okay.
This will be a great learning experience for me in person as I'm
Mhm.
sitting and talking and learning from what they've discovered in that session that
Yeah.
they took online. So
kind of the fresh perspective. So like Alan said, some of the supports that we have can be buffers towards how that trauma might develop internally to things that have happened to us. And so that is actually where the Alberta Family Wellness Institute came up with the conversation piece of the resilience scale. And so this is typically done through a diagram. They don't actually have any physical props to do
But
this
we
with, but
wanted
we
to-
do.
We do.
As Alan went on Facebook Marketplace and he found one. Found an antique scale. And so the concept behind it is that we all have negative things happening in our life at all times, but our resilience is based on the amount of positive supports that we have that allow us to cope with those things. So the way that they visualize this on this scale, which is a tool that we can actually use throughout our support agencies, you can use it in therapy, it can be a conversation that you have with us, people in your life that help you, that could be your supports, is having red kind of bricks is typically what they use as the adverse experiences, and then having green bricks as the positive supports. And so before we started this video, we were talking about things that might have happened in our lives in the past that we could maybe use as an exercise. Marie, is there something that
yes.
Yeah.
So from the age of 0 till about 35, I was heavily in a religion. And I thought and I still think very highly of this religion, even though I'm no longer part of it. But as I grew older, I started to have a lot of questions and doubts. I served a mission for a year and a half, and I taught all about this religion. And then when I came back, I was asking questions and just not finding answers to my questions. And so then I went on church websites and I dug deeper and deeper, and I went down some rabbit holes and found some truth that I wasn't taught. And through that and through other personal experience within church teachings and doctrines, I felt like I didn't fit in that mold any longer, and it didn't fit into my personal life anymore. And so what I didn't discover at the time was the trauma that was attached to it. I felt like I had been lied to my whole life. I felt that people that I cared for had lied to me, even though they didn't realize. Like they had been brought up in the church as well, and maybe they didn't realize or
They're bought into it, right?
Yeah.
They don't think it's
People are-
lying if it's the belief that they hold.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so the further I thought about it, the further into anxiety and some depression I got. And so
When was all this happening about?
do you know,
35, you
within
said?
5 to 7 years ago,
Yeah.
things started. I started to have questions. I had a friend in the queer community who was, and this was a long time prior to, but he had come out to me, and I didn't know how to support him because I was active in the church,
And the church frowned on anybody who's not
yes,
straight.
They say
on-
love the
what's
person, but
cisgender.
don't-
Cisgender. that's
Yes.
the word, right? Yeah.
they say love the person, but don't love the action. And I don't want to say don't support them, but sometimes I felt like I couldn't support the people that I loved the most. And so with that, I couldn't support the people I loved. I didn't want to reject them, but I felt like I was rejecting them. I also felt like I was lied to. After starting to step away from the church, I didn't ever feel disowned by the church or by the people because I made sure to keep those connections with them. And so the relationships didn't die. I made sure to keep those relationships intact. So I still had support. My family, I still have family in the church who are very active, and they still love me and care for me, and I use that support. I went to therapy. I did a lot of therapy.
Yeah.
Michaela and I work together, and we share the same office. And she actually brought it to light that, like, I have trauma, which I didn't realize that I had.
And speaking, just to jump in about therapy, everybody could use it, right?
Yes.
There's no downside to using
No.
therapy anyway. You know, even if you think your life is going great, you share where you're at, and then all of a sudden you say, oh yeah, I could do, this is where I kind of have a block or a limiting factor or something that my life could be just a little bit better. Thank you for that awareness, right? Somebody out from outside can see it where we can't. Right?
Exactly.
So, yeah.
And so it was actually Michaela having in-depth conversations at work as we're working. We would call it debrief. We would talk, of course, about work-related things, but some of that got into trauma talk. And
sometimes you just come into work after a traumatic thing. It's like 8 a.m. and you're crying over your cup of coffee. It's like, I can't start my work day until I've divulged this and kind of gotten it out of my brain, right? Yeah. And so some of it wasn't necessarily related to work, but it got us to the point where we were able to work.
Exactly.
Because we had to get it all out of our system.
So I had my person, who is still my person that I respect deeply and can read me. All the while I was still going through trauma. I remember going to work one day after therapy, after I had some therapy sessions and things like that. And I said to Michaela, I said, I think I'm healed. And she's like, just wait. And
it was like, give it 2 weeks. And then 2 weeks later, you were crying about something, you'd seen something on the news, or like, you know, someone in your life had vented about something with the church and you're crying. And I was like, remember 2 weeks ago when you said you were over it? Keep going to therapy. Don't cancel your next appointment.
and the reds, yes, there was a lot of reds, but in my healing journey, I've discovered that through therapy, through using my network, using Michaela, being able to speak about it, being here today to speak about my trauma, opening up to people, finding resources, finding other people that have experienced similar things, like it long outweighs the negatives. Like I could feel this thing and feel it and feel it with all the positive things that I've chosen. It's about the choices I've made, because I could have chosen to sit in my, and I don't want to say this about trauma, because sometimes we don't have control over it. Sometimes it's so deep and we don't know where it stems from. I was lucky enough to know where it stemmed from, to be able to pinpoint certain points in my life where the trauma started and things like that, and to have a great network. And so I've embraced all of those things.
So back to where we started with Bruce Perry's quote, right? If you're somebody who you're struggling with things, then find you, whether it's a paid therapist or a friend that you can talk to, an empathetic friend that you can share with. Those things are resources that are going to help you, right? Move through life. Yes.
And
exactly.
When you look at the scale, there are even some direct parallels between the reds and the greens. Because an example of the red, the first red Marie put down was, I feel like I can't support my friend. So the first green she put down was my amazing friends that I decided to support because I felt like I couldn't. And then it was, I felt like I'd been lied to my entire life. So the direct parallel on how to balance that out for her was going to therapy, doing some research, learning about a new worldview you could accept that you felt wasn't lying to you. And so in some ways, if we identify the reds that we have on our scale that actually allows us to properly learn where we can add greens, that would help balance it out and increase our resilience.
Well said.
Well said.
And I think also, like we were talking about this before we went live, in terms of a lot of times differences, and whatever difference are things that are like bring shame for people, right? And they bring kind of self-limiting beliefs that they can't be happy, or they can't enjoy this, or they can't be successful, or whatever the things are. And those beliefs, everybody's welcome, right?
Yes.
Everybody's
Yes.
what they bring is exactly what they're supposed to bring, right? This
Yes.
is their journey, and their everybody's views, everybody's life is important no matter what. And so
Yes.
those, kind of having the resources and the allies that can accept you as you are and encourage you along the road, right? Along the
Exactly.
journey, super important. Yeah.
Mhm. And so an example of how I would love to see this used within, I guess, our support agencies, because as a background, Marie and I, we both work in a disability support agency, and we support people with employment. And as surface level as it is, if you look at Maslow's hierarchy, right, you think that's kind of higher up at the top. That's not basic needs, right? Because the people that are accessing our services have social supports, they have funding, like generally speaking, they are able to maintain their day-to-day life. But we still find that people that come to access our services have some barriers in terms of their self-esteem, anxiety about going to work. What if I get judged at work because I have a disability? And the way that I want to maybe use this at work is to sit down with the people I support and hand them these little pieces. And it would be a lot easier to remember, I guess, what means what if we could write on them, which I think we can. It's just
I
tricky.
got markers.
That's the
dry
fun
erase
part.
markers.
Some dry erase thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
If we could write on it. But as an example, you could sit down with someone and you could say, what are the things that you're struggling with right now? Like, what's hard in your life? And then they might write on it, and they might say, what's an example? Just had to move. You just lost the home that you're comfortable with. You had to move across town. That's a big change. That's a red.
Can I just interject one
Yeah.
thing? You were saying about Maslow's hierarchy and
Yeah.
employment. Employment's super important, right?
Yeah.
For all of us,
Yeah.
like
Mhm.
what we do and how
Yep.
we contribute to other people's lives is important, right?
Mhm.
We get a great deal of
Yep.
satisfaction and
Yep.
value in that we're contributing
Mhm.
to somebody else's betterment,
Mm.
right?
That is so
Yeah.
true.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt.
And
No,
if
that's
we're
okay.
if we're talking about employment
Mhm.
sector, let's give some maybe real life. I'm not going to mention any
Yeah.
names here, but with D, let's put I'm blind
Sure.
and I'm visually
Yep.
impaired and
Yep.
I'm becoming blind.
Mm-hmm.
I've been in employment services for over a decade,
Mhm.
and I haven't found successful employment.
Yep.
Through other agencies and through other support networks.
Yep.
That would be another one. I've been
Mhm.
through a number of support networks
Yep.
to help me not just with employment, but with life circumstances, with community service. That would be another. It's
Could be this one.
it's hard. It can create
Mhm.
trauma.
Yep.
Um,
So before we get too far,
mhm.
let's say you're visually impaired. What's a green that we could put to help develop resilience to that adversity?
Okay, so because I have somebody specific in mind,
Yep.
something that we're currently working on is looking forward. Let's create a plan
Yeah.
let's plan ahead with your life. Let's work it in the sense that you are blind and
Not denying the
not
fact that that's
denying
happening.
that this could
Yep.
potentially happen in
Yep.
your life where you become completely blind. So what do we need to do? We need to consider therapy.
Yep.
And so he's looking into therapy.
Mhm.
We need to look for, remind me what CNIB means.
Canadian National Institute for the Blind, I think.
Yes,
Yep.
there we go.
That's it.
Yep.
So he's currently gone to one outing where he's met with people in person. So he did
Yep.
that. It wasn't really the best experience, but he's going again.
Mhm.
And he's going
Yeah.
to be attending
Mhm.
other classes,
Mhm.
whether it be online or in person.
Right. So another one of the reds was you've been receiving the same support for 10 years, hasn't gotten you anywhere. We're getting demoralized. What's a green we could do to balance out that and develop resilience there?
Right now, he has a fantastic network. So he has a mom who's very supportive of this planning ahead. He has a partner who's very supportive. We're now bringing in the other team that are in the same building as us. to work with him to make sure everybody's on the same
Mhm.
page.
So as
So
service
he's got
providers.
a whole bunch of resources around him now.
Yes,
Yeah.
he's got a big network of people that love him and care for him, and he recognizes that.
So this is a tool for us as a service provider to look and see, okay, you having no supports for visual impairment, that's an adversity. Let's make a referral to CNIB. Okay, you're feeling demoralized. You've been receiving the same services for 10 years, but you haven't reached the outcome you want. Well, let's restructure how our team operates to ensure that we're pushing you to your new goal and to ensure that like all the team is communicating in the same way. So that way we can actually move your goal forward cooperatively instead of just spinning our wheels for 10 years, right? So as a service provider, the REDs inform us on the supports that we need to be providing.
I need
Yeah.
to interject my little story I told
Do
you
it.
about my anti-racism class.
Yep.
Yes.
I took this course I took over COVID. I watched at least 100 hours of Gabor Mate and took all kinds of different courses.
Mhm.
But one that I took more recently was an anti-racism course. And it just shocked me. I was sharing with Maria and Michaela before we went live. It just shocked me. They had this little black child. There was one boy and one girl independently of each other. And they brought out a white doll and a black doll. And they would ask the child, hey, which of these dolls is the ugly one? And the child would point to the black one. Which of those ones is the stupid one? They'd point to the black one. Which of the ones is a bad one? They point to the black child. So this little person has internalized this message that my skin color means I'm stupid, I'm just not worthy, I'm
Mhm.
ugly, all these things. It's crazy, right? But this is what those beliefs that are instilled at those young ages,
Yeah.
unless they have kind of remedial action somewhere along the line, right? Those are the things that are going to impair their ability to really fully enjoy life and fully contribute to life, right? Like
Mhm.
both in terms of what they can give, but what they can enjoy out of life as well. So anything that's a difference is something that is anything that disconnects within our bodies is disease, and with our
Yeah.
communities is disorder, and like basically making our social health poor. The more and more disconnection, the more connection we have, the better off that we are.
Do you know what that kind of reminds me of something that actually just happened. My husband, he just graduated from college, and we had his convocation just recently. And my father-in-law came down to it, and same with my mother-in-law. They're no longer married; they've been divorced for a long time. But we were all there together, and my father-in-law came to our house after, and we got into this big discussion because our home is a very safe place. Michaela and I would say that about our office too. Anybody can come in at any time to speak whatever they need to speak,
Mhm.
and we will support them. And so that's our way about our home too. And the discussion came up about that our land was taken away from the Indigenous people, that we as white people took this land away from the Indigenous people, and they have a right to want it back, or to want some part of it, right? They have that right. We took it, and then the conversation led to Muslims, and it led to, well, do you know what? We're going to be taken over by this other race, by this other religion, whatever it may be, right? And I said to my father-in-law, what's the difference between us taking land and I don't agree. I don't think the land's going to be taken away. I think we can share the land with whomever. Canada is known for interracial
Mhm.
and for loving and supporting and
melting
welcoming.
pot.
It's a melting pot. And so, and if it happens, okay, it happens, and we embrace other cultures. But there's so much fear I feel in the world today that somebody else is going to take over.
Mhm.
Oh, we're going to become the minority. Oh, like,
Mhm.
and the discussion, I think, needs to lead to, how do we support one another? How do we love one another? How do we respect one another?
And I think a lot of this
Nice,
comes,
like you said, yeah.
yeah, if you have those fears and those beliefs that are somewhat taboo, how do you even address the stress behind them unless you can talk about them to someone that's a safe person?
Mhm.
Yeah.
But you're definitely right. It's fear-based, right?
Mhm.
It's like, oh, this is going to
Yes.
happen to me, and now I'm fearful because this person who looks different
Yeah.
than me is going to take something from me or in some way harm me.
Yeah. And my husband said to his dad, he said, "What has happened to you so far?" Because my father-in-law, he lives in Calgary, and he has beautiful neighbors from who are Muslim, and he's created a connection with them. He has, and he understands that. And when my husband asked him, what have they done to you? And my father-in-law couldn't think anything. And I said, okay, I think we need to, instead of thinking of this huge big picture, I think we need to think about the personal experiences that we have in our daily lives, the interactions.
Mhm.
If he can think of his neighbors, if he can think about the people
Yep.
that he says hello to every single day.
Or salamu alaikum. That's
Oh,
even
that's
nicer.
beautiful,
Yeah, I
right?
love it. Yeah.
Exactly. If he can, and he did, and he thought,
Mhm.
see, and that's what I love about these discussions. I love being a safe place where we can have open, heart-to-heart discussions, even if we
Yeah.
don't agree,
Mhm.
because we can usually find a commonality. And my father-in-law, he did say, "Do you know what? I haven't thought of that." And
Mhm.
yes, I agree with you.
This reminded me of the concept of spheres of influence. I don't know where that's pulled from. I don't know if that's a therapy term, but it's about having different circles in our life for like what things mean for us. And so small, this is like your household, right? Your household influences you the most. It's closest to center because it's the thing that's like the root of your life, right? And then outside that is probably family. Outside that, close friends and neighbors, community, global, and it kind of goes out and out. And in some ways, I feel with social media and the news, we're always stuck in this global frame of mind where everything in the world influences us. Stuff happening overseas that influences us, stuff happening in Ottawa that makes our opinions different. And
Things happening in Israel right now.
Yep. And so in some ways, it's really important for wellness to bring it back to that main circle of like, what do I have in my community that can form this opinion? Like, what's happening close to me that's actually relevant in my life? Because what's happening across the seas might not be the most relevant to my life personally. And can I do what's in my power to enact change in my sphere instead of
Well said.
trying to change things across the
Mhm.
world? What can you do in Lethbridge? What can you do in your family?
Exactly. And that might just be reaching out to somebody who's a little different than you and asking some questions. I met this Sikh guy the other day, and he had the turban and he had the knife, the daggery thing, and like on his belt.
So,
And I said, hey, that's like, these are elements of your faith, right? He says, yeah, there's 5 elements of my faith. And the dagger's one, the turban's another. There was some kind of a bun thingy under the turban. And then there was some, like a special garment that he had underclothing as well.
Beautiful.
There's one more thing, I couldn't remember. But anyways,
Yes.
that was this is how he expressed his belief, that kind of a thing. And the beliefs, the religious beliefs, like besides the fundamentalists who, these people are all, have to die and that kind of a thing. Everybody else wants basically the same thing, right?
Great.
They all want to be loved and love others and keep themselves, have a safe, healthy life, right? They all want their kids to have a better future. Like everybody wants the same
Yes.
things in that regard, except for people for whatever
Yes.
political reasons or whatever who are going to be, start wars and try to harm people. Everybody else that you would meet in your neighborhood want the same things that we want, right? So,
I think the thing that I love about that, Alan, is that you approached this person and you asked him. And I know that that's not easy for a lot of people. I feel like I would hope that I would do that. But I think if majority of people, if they saw somebody walking down the street with a dagger, who might not look like they're from Canada, would make some assumptions.
especially in southern Alberta.
Yeah. And so the fact that you went out of your way and you talked to this person, you approached him, you asked him questions, and you listened and you heard him.
yeah, we had a great
is
conversation.
Unbelievable.
And then I gave him a hug and we
Right?
went on our way. Yeah,
Yes.
it was great. Yeah.
Hugger.
Yes, he's a hugger, and I love his hugs. I love your hugs, Alan.
Thank you.
And so maybe I extend that invitation to anybody who's listening is is to
Hugs
get
or the.
yeah, but get out of your comfort
She's pimping
zone.
out my hug service. Hey, you want a hug?
You want to
$10.
get this guy?
$10 to Marie.
But I give mean hug. I'm a good hugger. But get out of your comfort zone and meet people and network and ask questions. Right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's so important.
And like we brought up a little bit about our Indigenous folks, right? So
Yes.
you see somebody on the sidewalk, right? Make eye contact and say "Okie," say hello, right?
Yes.
It's just like,
Yes.
and what if they want to have a conversation or they're hungry, you go get them a sandwich or whatever. The conversation, what you will learn is
Mhm.
like amazing, right?
Yeah.
It's just like how they survive and how,
Yes.
it's just like, it's incredible, different life than you have,
Yes.
but it's the things that they're doing, the things they need to do in order to survive as best as they know how,
Yes.
right? And, with our Indigenous folks too, a lot of times they're, regarded as, oh, they're not terrible parents or those kind of things. Well, how could they not be, like, how could they be a good parent when for 6 generations they weren't able to be a parent, right? Their kids got pulled out and went to residential school.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
I think of my daughter.
Decades of trauma.
Yeah, my daughter, she's 38 today. But when she was 5 years old, somebody came to my door, looked different, smelled different, but had the power to take my daughter out of my hand and lead her away.
Mhm.
I want to go into a hole and die, right?
Yes.
Like that
Yes.
would you
Yes.
lose all your motivation for life, right? So, yeah.
That is not something I've heard anybody else say about the concept of residential schools. Is that I learned, well, if I ever become a parent, I can inform a lot of my decisions as a parent from the fact that I was parented. I came home from school and I cried and I was hugged and they brought me my comfort food and they tucked me in for a nap or whatever. I had those compassionate experiences and now I get to role model those to my potential kids if I have them. Where that informs how I love children. And if I was never loved as a child, and if I was taken away and I was raised by teachers and I was in a communal setting of like 500 kids and I never had those one-to-one compassionate experiences, I have no frame of reference for how I provide that to my own child.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
You know, in
huge.
our office today,
Mhm.
Michaela's in my office today, because you were just talking about homeless population and in the Indigenous community. We had this conversation today, Michaela and I did, about homeless people. Michaela and I, and you, Alan, we all have the luxury. We have a home. We have a work environment where we can shut our doors. We can scream in our pillows as loud as we want or need. We can be in our vehicles and crank the music super loud, and we can pound on the steering wheel. We can let out our outbursts without being viewed. We can be pissed off at the world and do all of these things in privacy.
Yeah.
But if you're homeless,
Yeah.
you can't.
Yeah.
Right.
And so, and with that, there might be some mental health, but there also might not be.
Right?
But
I mean, we have the privilege of having,
Yeah.
sorry, claw you,
I know.
having our worst experiences in privacy, and these people have their worst experiences in the public eye across the street from a business where they're getting videotaped and it'll be put on the Lethbridge Roasted Toast. And who knows what they're going through that day. Like, I worked in a nonprofit that supported the homeless population, and oftentimes what we heard was, and I did this over the winter time, so it was -40. They would come and they would stay in the front doorway area, not the lobby, because we wouldn't let them in the lobby. We'd have a locked door. They'd stay in the vestibule where it was warm, and they would sleep in the vestibule, and they would say, just last week my phone got stolen. Now I can't talk to my daughter. That's a red, right?
Yep.
Then my best friend overdosed from this new batch of whatever in the city, another red, and I have no money. I can't buy any food. I'm starving. All I've eaten today is these granola bars you've given me. I'm so sick and tired of Costco granola bars. I haven't had a hot meal. That's a red. So if they're walking down the street talking to themselves, I talk to myself when I'm stressed out. I mumble. I'll be brushing the snow off my car, talking to myself in my parking lot. They're walking down the street talking to themselves. They are stereotyped as this crazy homeless
Crazy.
person when we have no idea the stuff that they've gone through. They've lost connection to their family because they lost their phone. All their stuff was stolen. Their best friend died. They're wondering how they're going to stave off withdrawals, and they're hungry. Like
They were just beat up.
right.
I saw somebody beat up downtown one night,
Mhm.
an Indigenous man who was
Mhm.
homeless, and it
Right.
disgusted me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Back to when you were talking about like you can go in your house and you can
Yes.
Mhm.
now that to me kind of reminds me about just the thing to be grateful for, right?
Definitely.
We got a house, we can lock the door, we can be in a
Yes.
safe place, we have a nice warm bed, we got a fridge stocked with food, right? We got a furnace and
Mhm.
air conditioning, or we can control the elements and
Yeah.
be safe in that environment and whatever, read or enjoy the comforts of life. Well, where like 47% of our Indigenous kids in our community live in poverty, right? A lot of times the only time those kids eat is when they go to school. Well, that's like super
Yes.
sad, right? And how can those little kiddos, like their bodies and their mind develop properly
Mhm.
if they don't
No.
even have a decent nutrition, right?
No.
So, yeah.
We were talking a little bit about some of my history earlier on, and I worked with kids who came from poverty, abuse, and neglect
Mhm.
in Calgary, and this little nonprofit school was based in the poorer part of the community, and so we had a bunch of little kiddos that attended, and we fed them actual meals, 2 meals a day, one in the morning, one in the afternoon. But a lot of them were very hungry because they didn't have it at home. There was a lot of abuse, and so oftentimes food was withheld in the homes. There was
Well,
Yeah.
I don't know where in this experience happened in your life, but you were talking about the little girl who
yes,
had stayed with dad and the girlfriend,
Yes.
and then the other weekend stayed with mom
Yes.
and the boyfriend.
yes,
And in both cases, the little girl was going into an abusive environment, one sexually and one just abusive,
Exactly.
right? Just
So with that, so it was at the same school. We later on discovered that mom, she had a boyfriend in that home, and dad had a girlfriend in this other home. And on the weekends, I believe she went to dad's house, and during the week she was at mom's house. And so during the week, every day, right at the end of school, she would it be in full-fledged traumatic tears. And this wasn't fake. Like it was full-fledged traumatic tears, breakdown, laying on the floor, not being able to move. She was just frozen in spot with her little backpack on. And it came out later on, she informed us that this boyfriend was molesting her. And then later on, there was tears on the weekend, like on the Fridays, where she would do the same thing. And it came out that dad was physically abusing her and beating her up. And so there was no relief from either home. The positive, like I want to focus on some of the positive from that, was as soon as we found out that this was happening, that network gathered together. Mom found out. She immediately broke up with the boyfriend. She got this girl into therapy. She chose, like, social services had to go into her home, but she was very accepting of that, just to find the proof and things like that. She did stop going to dad's house, I believe, at least until things had mellowed down there. So she had a big support network around her that mellowed that chaos in her life.
I want to share a story about this Métis guy that I had come do some taping and sanding for me, like drywall taping and sanding.
Yes.
So I arranged for him to come, and then I wasn't sure if he could find the place, so I texted him, right? But he found the place, and I said, "Oh, did you get my text?" And he said, "Well, no, I don't read." I said, "What do you mean you don't read, right?" He's like 50 years old. "I don't read." I said, "Really?" He says, "Yeah, I went to Indian school for a day, and they beat the hell out of me, so I'm not going back there. And then I went to the white school, and they beat the hell out of me there, so he never went to school." And his family, his brothers and sisters were all lighter skinned than he was. He was dark skinned, and he was the subject to like all of the abuse in the family, basically. The mom and dad, there was both mom and dad, but they would like smack him on the side of the head and tell him he was stupid every day and, you know, things like that. And like the lighter skinned siblings would get way better treatment kind of a thing, right? So it's just like, oh my, like how could you like, and he, to his credit, he was married, he had 2
Yeah.
boys that he had raised, like, and they went to school and they were doing really well. Like I'm in the same conditions. I'm not sure I would have pulled that off. That's pretty
Yeah.
amazing. So yeah.
That's a big thing that's talked about in the Brain Story certification that we started talking about at the beginning of this chat is the foundation that's built. And I think that's what I meant earlier when I was talking about Maslow's. I wasn't talking about Maslow's. I was talking about building a foundation of your life. And that building, it's like your life is a building. You start with the foundation in childhood. And
Building better brains. I think that's the
building
reference.
better brains.
Yeah.
Yeah. There we go. So your formative experiences, like while your brain is developing, of course, that's the foundation of your life. And everything else that you accomplish off of that, employment, buying a house, having a family, having a healthy social circle, that's all stuff that you build on top of this foundation. And so if your foundation is full of abuse, trauma, neglect, in both instances, like having no education, being ostracized from the family, the abuse that happened, all of that makes a crumbly foundation. And what kind of coping skills do you develop when you're in these toxic life circumstances? You probably develop unhealthy coping mechanisms, and that leads to long-lasting impacts on what you can build on your foundation. Because if you have no coping skills, how can you get a job? If you have no coping skills, or if you never got an education, or if you can't build social relationships because of your past experiences, right? How do you get married? How do you have a family? Like, what do you build off of that rocky foundation?
Exactly. And back to the ACEs study, right?
Yep.
If it's where I think it was 5 ACEs or more, there's like a 4,700% more likelihood you're going to be a substance abuse disorder.
Yes.
Why? Because you
Yes.
need that to feel normal, right? Like I guess I'm,
What do you mean by ACEs?
adverse childhood experiences.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know that we talked about that.
Yeah. Which I think is ACEs are normally a good thing, right? Like, if I had 4 ACEs to play cards, I'd be,
I know I was thinking
but
that.
yeah,
Oh,
so,
winner.
yeah,
Why none of them? Yeah.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And one of the coolest things that I learned from the Brain Story training when I first took it was a program launched out of Chicago. I forget the name of it, but it's utilizing the ACEs study in a what's the name for the doctor of pregnant women and children?
Obstetrician?
There's that one. What's the name of the doctor for kids then?
Oh,
That's not the name.
pediatrician?
A pediatrician. There we go. So it's a clinic with OBGYNs and pediatricians. And so it's like a transitional clinic for women that are pregnant and then have kids. And so they come in and they're pregnant and they talk with a doctor or whatever. And the first nurse that they see sits them down, of course, like gets their name, birthday, says, hey, I'm going to do this quick quiz with you. And the quiz is the 10 ACEs. And so they go, under the age of 18, were you sexually abused? Were you neglected? Do you have a caregiver in prison? Did you have any of this stuff, right? Because there's all 10. And then depending on their ACE score, that mom actually gets referred out to different programs for
More support.
more supports.
Nice.
And
That's
so
amazing.
those programs might be about not utilizing substances when you're pregnant to decrease the risk of FASD. It could be increasing your personal life skills so that way you're ready when a baby comes. That could be like developing a routine for maintaining a home, doing laundry, making sure you're well fed. The programs are just like so wide for developing that independence with the mom. And then once the mom has the kid, transitions to different referrals within the pediatrician side. And the pediatrician actually keeps tabs on the mom and the kid for the first 5 years of their life. And so that, depending on the severity of the or the amount of ACEs that they get scored with when the mom initially goes in, they might have home visits once a week, and that is to add a green where the mom was indicating she had reds, right? That is to ensure that the kid is being treated well, that the mom can access supports for things she might need help with. Maybe mom is super stressed out, she's pulling her hair out, that's a referral to therapy, right? Or maybe that's a referral to have respite. Like maybe someone comes into the house for a couple hours and gives her a couple hours of downtime. That could be a service they provide as well. And so the whole goal of this program is by assessing the ACEs of the mom as she gets pregnant, they then work towards minimizing the development of ACEs in a new child and solidifying the foundation that this mom can provide for the child as they grow up.
That's beautiful.
That's
great.
Yeah, it's my favorite thing to talk about with this program.
Yeah. Okay, now
Yeah.
I got something I want to add.
Yeah.
Dr. Gabor Mate, right? I usually don't pronounce his name. I don't know if it was Gabor or Gabor, but
What is he
Gab-
known for?
We'll
Oh,
judge you.
Pardon
Just
me?
kidding. I said we'll judge you.
Oh, okay, good.
What is he known for?
Oh man, he's written like 50 books. His most recent one, he's 76 years old
Oh,
now,
wow.
and his most recent one is called The Myth of Normal. Okay.
Mm.
And when he was a little child, like just a few months old, his mother had to give him to a stranger to keep him in war-torn,
Yes.
was it Germany? And like to protect him from the Nazis, anyways. Mom gave him to a stranger to keep him safe, and then the mom didn't get him back for like 5 weeks. So he's had this trauma in his life still
Yes.
that impacts him today.
Yes.
And he's a world-renowned psychologist, knows all about trauma, knows all about this impact, but it still, has him feeling somewhere where he is, being abandoned, being left, about, being judged, that kind of thing. But one thing he talks about is that people who are heroin addicts in downtown Hastings Street in Vancouver, kind of a thing, they describe a hit of heroin as a warm hug. So it's so again, it speaks to kind of connection, just a warm hug by itself would be, something that would
Yes.
replicate this powerful drug that has all these horrible
Yes.
side effects in your body,
Yes.
right? So
Yeah.
anyways, if you are in a position to give warm hugs to somebody, don't force it, just, would you like a hug? It's definitely inappropriate if you just assume that. I found that out. I gave a hug to this young woman and I did not ask her permission, and it was like a little bit traumatizing for her, and I didn't
Some people
realize
don't
it.
like it.
Yeah. So you got to be careful with that.
Yes.
So I've learned. So.
I think a piece of trauma that I do want to touch on is, you can't change what has happened to you, and oftentimes that's not your fault. Sometimes, yes, we can create trauma within ourselves, but a lot of times it happens to us. And so we often hear about generational trauma, that it can pass down when we think about drugs or alcoholism or abuse, and oftentimes that can be passed down from generation or learned. It's often learned,
Sure.
right? But we can change trauma, and change has to start with us. We're the only ones that can create change. And so, like I'd mentioned earlier and I wouldn't even say like it was huge trauma to leave. It was huge trauma. Who am I kidding? It was big to me. So it was massive trauma to leave the church that I'd known and loved for decades, right? But it was my choice to become healthy again, mentally, and to talk to my doctors and come up with a plan on how to do that, to seek out a therapist, to seek out a friendship, to be open, right? And so with trauma, we can create change, and we have to stop that generational track. I don't ever plan to have kids, but if I did, if my husband and I did, I could have carried that trauma on.
Sure.
And they could have been burdened with my trauma and my husband's trauma of him being bullied throughout school. But we have chosen to stop that trauma.
Yeah. But there's always hope, right?
Yes.
Like back to
always hope.
Dr. Bruce Perry, the book. Have you
Yes.
read that book, The Boy Who Was Raised as a Dog? Either of
I
you?
have.
Amazing,
Yes,
isn't it?
amazing.
And the title story is a boy who was raised as a dog
Yes.
because the mom was like 14, had
Yes.
this child, couldn't take care of him, gave to the mom to take care of, and the mom was like, 67 and obese and
Yes.
had diabetes, and then the mom dies shortly after, and she gives, so the mom's boyfriend starts to care for the child, and he doesn't know anything about children, so he cheats it just like his dogs that he has, put him in a kennel,
Exactly.
fed him with the dogs,
Yeah.
like didn't like, so the kid couldn't speak, he was in like a cage, and all he would do is shriek and throw feces at people,
And
right?
oftentimes dogs are treated better
Yeah,
than
exactly.
Mhm.
But in the
Yes.
end, Dr. Bruce Perry, knowing his neurosequential model of development, can kind of go back at the age the child had that trauma and kind of recreate the brain
Mm.
structure
Mhm.
to help that child kind of move forward. And in the end, with that child,
Yes.
he's going to college, and he's got a girlfriend, and he's like, you know, he's articulate, and
Mhm.
all of these things. So from a like an animal throwing feces to somebody who can speak and communicate with others and
Yes.
connect with others and have meaningful relationships.
Mhm.
Huge success, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
The right supports were there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's about
Now-
using the people around you.
Michaela, do you want to talk about your modeling experience? Whoa.
She's like, why?
Do I? You know, I don't know.
You don't
if
have
it's-
to if you don't want
I
to.
don't know if it's a good scale representation, because I honestly think I was a little too young to properly implement resilience tools. So I think that it wasn't until I was, well, it's an ongoing process. Okay, I gotta back up here.
I want to stop you for a second
Okay.
because in our office, oftentimes we have this conversation about body, and
Yep.
like for my body, I'm chubby, I'm cute, I'm compact, and I love it. And so
Mhm.
and Michaela being an ex-model, she has
Mhm.
those thoughts in her head. I
Yeah.
need to be viewed a certain way,
Yeah.
and so that trauma has carried on.
It's
It's affecting now.
this entire video that's been in front of me, I've actually been wondering like how my stomach looks.
Oh
in the
my
video.
gosh, she's so cute. She's awesome.
So yeah, because when I was 14, I was scouted as a model. I was, I think, about 5'10" when I was 14. I was very tall. All my pants were too short. I mean, they still are, but
I have to look up to Michaela. I have no choice.
I'm 6 feet right now. So I was scouted when I was really young. I was super skinny. I come from my family, super high metabolism, very tall, very skinny. And so scouted as a model, and then did some modeling work in Canada. And when I was 16, worked internationally. And
Predominantly in Italy, wasn't it?
Yep, Italy, and I did some work in Paris as well. And obviously, I ate so much food.
Wow.
It was so good to be in Italy. I loved their pizza, gelato, like all the pastries. I ate so much, and I honestly gained weight. That was the first time in my life I like properly actually gained any weight, was when I was in Italy, which is backwards because when you're a model, you're supposed to lose weight. So I did it all wrong, and my modeling agency there hated it. They would measure me every week with the little measuring tapes all around my waist, around the bust, around the hips, and there's like 24, 32 inches is the maximum that you can be at. And so I was always kind of in my mid-range, pushing that line, just because I like eating a lot. But generally speaking, I had a pretty slim stature, right?
Well,
So
but your body was still developing then too. It was
Yes.
growing. Like, I mean, your
You're-
frame
right?
structure is your
You're
frame
still a
structure,
baby.
right?
Yeah,
that
I mean,
age.
I was a late bloomer when it came to actually hitting puberty. So I hadn't properly developed as a woman by the time I was, 16. I was probably like mid-puberty. And so, anyways, got quite a bit of shaming when I was there about my eating. Was told, don't eat 4 hours before you work, but we're also going to make you work from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. So there's actually no time in there that you should eat, or you can't eat by these arbitrary rules of when you should eat. And the reason why you can't is because if you're bloated, you look fat, and then you make the dresses look
And
bad.
don't eat pizza. Don't eat pasta.
Don't eat pizza. They would tap my belly and be like, no pizza, because I couldn't speak. Well, I couldn't speak Italian, and they couldn't speak much English, so no more pizzas. They tapped my belly all the time. And so I came home, and I was in grade 11 at that point. And so I took a a year and a half off of modeling so that way I could graduate. I really wanted to focus on my marks. And so in that year and a half, that was about the time that I really rounded out with puberty generally. Like my shoulders got broader, my hips got broader. I got the womanly fat that you get on your little like squishy bits, right? The love handles.
That are healthy.
And that are healthy and normal, people say. I'm still learning that. But when that happened and I graduated high school, I was ready to go back into the modeling industry, I couldn't meet my measurements. And I started really restricting my eating. And it got really concerning for a couple months there. Luckily, it never got to a point that anyone outside of, like, nobody knew that this was happening because you couldn't see it on me yet. Like, I wasn't emaciated, I wasn't losing my hair or anything, but it was a completely internal battle that I was fighting, and even nobody was tracking my eating, right? Nobody noticed that I was skipping meals or only eating small amounts. And I remember at one point I was having a really rough day with all of this, and I went for a drive, and I hadn't eaten yet that day, and I went all the way up to the Crow's Nest Pass. And I did the Frank Slide hike because I had no idea why I was up there. I was just like, I needed to get out. I almost fainted on the hill because I hadn't eaten for the past 36 hours. And that was the moment that I went like, whoa, this is actually scary. And this is not okay.
Yeah.
And so I was 18 at that point. And so at that point, I just emailed my model management company and I said, I'm out. Like, this is unhealthy for me. I have to quit. But because it was from 14 to 18 that I was really focused on all these ideologies of what it is to look like a woman, what it is to look beautiful. It's really ingrained in me to this day. And I deal with body dysmorphia, body dysphoria. I always get it mixed up. I deal with the one where I look in the mirror and I don't look accurate. I look like, when I see myself in the mirror, it's a funhouse mirror. So like my head is all big and my body's all like whoop whoop. That's how I see myself in the mirror sometimes. And it gets really bad whenever I'm doing anything that is body focused. So even working out, going to the gym is bad for me, like, because I get hyper fixated on my body and then my body changes. Living in a house with mirrors is bad for me. I shouldn't be able to look at my body really. Like, that is kind of ingrained in my foundation at this point.
So a positive conversation that Michaela and I had in the office. So I'm a dwarf. Maybe you can tell by my short limbs and things like that. And I'm curvy and I'm short and compact and I love all of this about myself. And so growing up, my mom, and not in a negative way, my mom is the sweetest woman that you could ever meet. But she would comment about my bubble butt, right? And she would say, "Oh, those jeans aren't good because your butt, it enhances your." I've got a butt, you guys. Like, I've got an ass. I've got a huge ass. And when I was growing up, I didn't love it because my mom would highlight it and she would talk about it but she taught me how to wear proper clothes for my body, right? And I made a choice. I'm all about choices and making choices. I made a choice that I was going to love that part of my body, and that had to start with me. So what I would do is I would stand naked in front of the mirror, I'd turn around and I would look at my butt, and at first I'd cringe, and then I'd say, "No, I love you, butt." I love you, butt. Not butt. But I love you, ass. Back then, that was in my religious days, so I didn't say ass. I would say butt. I love my butt. Until here I am today, and I love my ass. We joke about my ass because it's so large. But man, this body.
You're pretty close friends, eh?
Yes.
It's also because we share an office, so
Yes.
Marie always has to like.
I have to get into my chair, but you know, I love this pudgy body of mine, and I embrace it. And the conversation that Michaela and I have, I hope it was with you. It could have been somebody else in my office.
Who knows?
I'm often the therapist in our office. People come to me, but it's important to pinpoint and directly look at those pieces of yourself that you're not comfortable with, that you don't love, and to change that mindset and say, I do love that. That is a piece of who I am. And for Michaela, like she looks in a mirror and it looks obscure. So does mine. Like this body, come on.
If you can see yourself in the mirror.
Yes.
Half the time. you
Half
can
the
only see
times
this
I can only see this part of me. But for Michaela, who says she appears warpy and stuff, it's good and healthy to look at yourself and say, I gotta focus my attention on this part that I don't love, and change that mindset.
Yeah, makes good sense. I mean, if we are, which we are, spiritual beings having this human experience, right?
Mhm.
We get the bodies we get, right? That,
Yeah.
like, that's what, through our genetics, what came to us, and then, the choices we make as well,
Yes.
somewhat, right? But
Yes.
that ultimately the body type that we have, whether big boned or we're
Yes.
lean or whatever it is, that we get. But it's only the vehicle we have to have this
Yes.
human experience, right?
Yes.
And there's different advantages and disadvantages to everybody,
Yeah.
right? And to appreciate and value, and be grateful for the one
Yes.
we have and what it can do, right?
Exactly.
That's more important. What can this body, this
Mhm.
allows me to enjoy these things, allows me to
Mhm.
whatever activity that is, right?
Yeah.
That's important to you.
Yeah.
right? So-
And Michaela and I often joke in our office too when I'm eating something. Like she gets so excited when I order some food or I bring some lunch, because she knows that it's always going to be too much.
Yeah.
And so even though my body is short and pudgy and hers is 6 foot long and lean, we're both healthy.
Yeah, and you eat half your meal, and then
I eat half of my meal.
I eat my full lunch, and then I eat Marie's half of my
Yes.
meal on top of it.
And so no matter what we look like, I'm healthy. I do probably 3 steps in one of Michaela's steps. And so I get my steps in every day. And so I'm pudgy. Yes, my hips and my limbs and everything hurt, but that's with dwarfism too. And I could lose some pounds. But Michaela, in her dysmorphia or whatever it is, her thoughts and her body structure, she's very healthy. I hope you don't mind me saying, but we were talking about like the little pounds that she's gaining and how she's feeling about that. And to me, those pounds are very healthy.
I feel bad. I was reflecting on it because I've been gaining weight recently, and I had a conversation with a friend who has never talked about weight struggles, but I noticed that they've gained weight over the past year. I was talking to them and I was like, I'm gaining weight. And I just don't know how to feel. Like, am I still healthy? And that was coming from a dysmorphic thought because I'm very much in my healthy BMI range. But as a dysmorphic thought, anything above what I was is bad now, and now I'm unhealthy. And so I was having this conversation with them, and they were just like listening to me, and then they changed the conversation. And I went home and I was like, I hope I didn't offend them with my dysmorphic thoughts being like, now I'm unhealthy, and then applying my perception of unhealthiness on how I see them. Because I don't think that they're unhealthy. Because I would love any person that I see wholeheartedly with no judgment of their weight. But then I face all that judgment on myself, right? Yeah. Even though it's
And part of it with you was that, here's what size we make this dress. So it was
Yes.
like the human has to fit the garment
Have to
as
fit
opposed to
that.
the garment fitting the human, right?
Yes.
Like, because it's supposed to be that we can alter the garments really
Yes.
easy to fit the right person, right?
Yeah.
Right, the body shape that the person has.
Mhm.
Have you ever heard of Ayurvedic medicine or Ayurvedic type?
Very briefly.
Okay, so they talk about there being 3 dosha types, right? And part of that speaks to body types too, right?
So what is dosha?
Dosha is a body type,
Okay.
through Ayurvedic.
Okay.
And so
Mhm.
Ayurvedic, they have about these 3 doshas, and then there's super, so it's not like one size fits all. It's not that one
Mhm.
body type, this is the healthy one and everything else is unhealthy. It's like, here's kind of the characteristics of this dosha type, Pitta, Kapha, and something else. Anyways, there's 3 of them. But they all have different type of characteristics, right? And those body types then relate, that dosha type relates in how, when you're under stress, that you're going to react, whether you're going to be more anxious,
Right.
whether you're going to be more angry, whether you're going to be more depressive, right? That kind of thing. But a part of that is the self-awareness that this is my my
Mhm.
dosha, and if you eat according to that dosha and sleep according to that dosha and those kind of things, you kind of maximize your health for your body type. Not that you have to fit some mold, but
Yep.
that you maximize for your
Fascinating.
body type.
Mhm.
It's
Do you know if you can change doshas?
yeah. You
Oh,
can.
okay. Because
Yeah.
I used to be like so anxious disposition of the yin yang, but now it seems like opposite. When it seems more depressive type of like, chaos is happening. I just need to take a nap.
Yeah.
Or chaos
Or
is
eat
happening.
something.
Yeah, I just need to go home and veg.
Yeah.
You know, whereas before it would be pacing,
Yeah.
anxious,
Yeah.
overreact.
Yeah, but you can change. But I think there's a lot of, and this stuff has been around like 10,000 years, right? It's
Sure.
not new,
Sure.
but it's just like the more I learn of it, the more that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Where we kind of like we have our standardized blah, blah, blah scales that we follow for everything, for blood work, for body
Yes.
size, for
Yes.
everything.
Yes.
And this is what it is. Well, like people who are different bodies have different,
Yes.
they still can be healthy, right? And really kind of the functional definition of health as I see it is you can do the things that are important for you, right? The
Exactly.
things that you enjoy, that bring you
Mhm.
pleasure, that bring you
Right.
satisfaction in life, you can do those things. If you can do those things and you can continue to do those as you age, hallelujah, you're healthy,
Exactly.
right? So,
I think it's also about keeping track of our life patterns. For example, I'm going to talk menstrual, right? Like during premenstrual cycles for me, I can become emotional and I have self-doubt, feel jealousy, where I would never ever feel jealousy, right? I could feel a lot of these things. And then a week later, recognize that that's a pattern that I might have in my life. Cycles of the sun,
mhm.
right?
Mm.
In the winter, I've seen the pattern over the past few years that I can become more depressed in the winter.
Mhm.
And so what do I need to do about that? Currently, I'm on some medication that helps, right? And I can talk to my doctor about doses. I can talk to my therapist. I can use my network, right?
Have you ever
Following-
used one of them blue lights?
Yes. Well, blue, is that what we have? It's
Yeah.
sunlight.
Yeah, where
Yeah,
you put it
lamp.
on and like I find for
Yes.
me, that makes a huge difference. Just like
Yes.
last week when it was like gray a couple days, I was kind of feeling a little off.
Right?
Plug on the blue light in like
Yeah.
15 minutes, like, oh man, I feel
Yeah.
better, right? Just from that experience.
Yeah, and in the winter time, I have an alarm clock that it starts to give me natural sun
Oh yeah.
Oh, cool.
within a half an hour before the alarm goes off.
Nice.
Super cool.
So-
I want to get one of those.
But it's about recognizing the cycles in our, not just our life, but the world around us,
Mhm.
and giving ourselves grace
Yes.
that
Yeah.
that when we're at our lows, it's okay.
Well, I also love that you are going like kind of hardcore to love your body, right? To accept
Oh, my
and love your
goodness,
body
yes.
as it is, right?
Yes.
It's the only one we got, right?
Yes.
So the more that we can appreciate and value it, and not like in necessarily even how it
Kind.
looks, but in terms of how it functions for you.
I
the
am
things-
cute. I am cute. Like, this is cute.
Alright.
But you're able to do everything that you want to do in life,
Yes.
right? And that's what's important.
And I'm able to choose to not climb a mountain or to
Yeah.
climb like
Right.
What I want to do in life is nap.
you can do
Set a
that.
low bar.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I think most of us can pull that one off.
Yeah.
Right? This is my goal of life, to be a good napper.
I'll be
I'm a pro.
satisfied. Not here to beat other people. Just here to be happy.
I know this conversation has kind of gone a lot of places, but it really does intertwine, right?
I think so.
If we talk about trauma and things that affect us and becoming aware of ourselves.
Should we kind of like what time? We're over an hour. We've been having this conversation.
We could talk forever.
Well, that's true.
But
We should probably kind of wrap
Yes.
it up.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
here's, I
Let's
think,
do that.
you interject to summarize.
Mhm.
The better that you can appreciate and value and love yourself, the better that you can be of value and love others. Would that be a fair
Yes.
statement?
that is definitely fair. Even
Mhm.
so I've heard recently. I'm not going to get into another big discussion, but
Okay.
oftentimes we hear in order to love other people, you have to love yourselves. I think you also have to give that grace that if you can't love yourself, that you can still it's hard to love others, but give kindness.
Mhm.
And
You used the word grace, didn't you?
yes, I
think you-
used the word grace.
Yeah.
Be generous to those around you, because as you're doing those things, you're showing that love to yourself.
Can I share something with you? I
We could talk for 2 hours.
I think now I love myself.
Yes.
Okay, that wasn't the case before, but I had a transitional thing that I just decided that I was going to be my favorite human being. Period. And how easy a decision is that, right? That it's just you decide. It could be that you're deciding on your favorite fruit is bananas, right? I'm my favorite human being, so you
Yeah.
decide that. And here's what I noticed in very, very short order: my self-talk became way nicer, way
Right.
more encouraging, way more supportive, right?
Mhm.
And then I think from there, now I've transitioned to the part where I can say I love myself, right?
Yes.
And in so doing, I think I'm of more value to everybody around me, that I can be appreciative, valuable, to
Yes.
them, and be an empathetic listener for kind of what journey they're on or what challenges they're having, right? So yeah.
I think with that, it's what are you saying to yourself? Would I say? Maybe I would say to Michaela, because we have that relationship. You're an asshole.
Your face looks weird today.
Yeah.
You're funny looking.
I said that to her, but I say that out of love because we
Yeah.
have that relationship, right?
Yep.
But I wouldn't say, Michaela, you're ugly. I wouldn't
Mm.
say, I can't stand to be in your presence. I wouldn't say that to Michaela. I wouldn't say that to somebody that I don't like.
No.
Because
Yeah.
that's
But in the
hurtful.
past, you probably said that to yourself pretty times.
At times, and,
Yeah.
and still today I would say it at times, but I choose to try to turn that around.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And so if I don't say that to Michaela, what are you laughing about?
When I'm angry, sometimes when I'm
Oh my
angry, I
gosh.
can't stand to be in Marie's presence.
It's true, and she
It happens.
we,
I just
we
gotta
have
eat.
great communication, and she'll tell me, and
Mhm.
I'll say, well, that's a you problem.
It's an issue, not an
That's
issue.
an issue. But communication. But
Yeah.
I don't want to take much more of this time.
No. Anyways, be kind to others, be kind to
Mhm.
yourself. And if you can be a listener to somebody who needs an empathetic ear, right? Be that person. If you can, if they're comfortable with it and you can share a hug with them, do it, right? And likewise, if you need an empathetic listener or you need a hug, then ask for it, right? There's people around who want to help, right? Would you agree?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. And appreciate you being you. There's not another one like you in the whole world. You're the only you. So appreciate and value you.
And deal with your trauma.
And deal with your trauma. Exactly. Okay. We good?
Yeah, thank you for inviting us.
Thank you.
Oh,
so much.
yeah. It was
It's a
great.
lot of
We should
fun.
probably do this again.
Right?
All right. Keep yourself well. Get a Matson.
Good, Matson.